Hi and welcome to Taking a Gap Year in 2020. This is a video for students who are newly considering a gap year this year as a result of their college or university unveiling their plans for the fall. My name is Julia Rogers, and I'm going to guide you through a little bit of an introduction to a gap year and give you some ideas of what I'm seeing as far as program opportunities and activity opportunities for students taking a gap year this year. So I'm going to unshare my screen for a second so I can say hello. Hi, my name is Julia Rogers. I'm going to give a proper intro on my slide deck in just a second, but thank you so much for being here. This is going to be, as I mentioned, an opportunity for you to learn a little bit about what's out there this year so that you can make your decision about how you're going to move into your college or gap year experience with as much information as possible. All right, so let's get started here. So again, my name is Julia Rogers, and I run EnRoute Consulting. EnRoute Consulting is a company that I founded almost 12 years ago. I only do gap year coaching. So that's my primary business, is working with students to help them design gap year plans and also help build out the gap year movement, which is a growing effort to create more opportunities for students who decide to take a gap year here in the States. I'm also the board chair of the Gap Year Association, which is kind of the governing nonprofit body for the gap year movement here in America. So it's definitely something I'm passionate about. It's something that I dedicate all my time to knowing about too. So, a lot of people think that they know what a gap year is, or maybe they have friends or family who've taken a gap year. Just want to create a definition for us so we have some shared language around what a gap year is. I like to define it as a structured period of personal growth aided by activities of enrichment. So that basically means that you are taking this time to intentionally choose how you want to enter adulthood, and you're utilizing activities and opportunities and programs to help build out a meaningful set of experiences for the defined period of time. A gap year does not have to be a whole year. If you defer from college, a gap year ends up being probably around 13 or 14 months actually, but some people take a shorter amount of time or a longer amount of time. So the amount of time is not as important as the fact that it is defined. So there's a beginning and an end, and you fill it with opportunities that are exciting and meaningful to you. What a gap year is not. A gap year is not just some default decision that gets made for you. And so I really want this to be a top of mind as you're making the decision about your next step. So you really want to be thoughtful about how you spend your year and make sure that it's not just, this void that you could have been doing more with. So there are a lot of questions that are coming through right now through social media and other questions that I'm fielding. And one of the biggest ones is people just wondering if it's even worth taking a gap year this year. And my answer to that is very easy. Yes, I think it is. And this is not just with a Pollyanna mindset of oh, it's all going to be okay. We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I completely accept that fact. But the other flip side of that is that I know for a fact that there's going to be ways for students to engage in meaningful activities. So what does that mean? We're going to get to that later, but there's going to be ways that you can work in your community, that you can travel and do other things domestically. And hopefully as the year moves on, there may even be ways for you to travel if that's something that you want to do. Why should you take a gap year this year? So we've been seeing the gap year option grow year over year for the past 5 or 6 years now. And the reason that people take a gap year is no different, than in previous years. It's really to help grow personally, to understand your place in the world, and to take that intentional step into adulthood. But this year, there's this added, layer to it, in that it's also helping you set up for hopefully having a more normal college experience starting next year. And that's a really, really valid reason for considering a gap year. And it can you can have your cake and eat it too. The idea here would be that you can have a gap year that you, at the end of it, you say, wow, that was an amazing period of my life. But then you're also setting yourself up for success and having hopefully what we all hope is going to be a more normal college experience starting next fall. And then, how do you go about planning a gap year? Obviously, this is a whole different kind of planning process than choosing a college and going through that kind of application process. One of the things that I like to, frame a gap year as is that it's actually kind of the complete opposite of the college admissions process. A gap year is all about what you want to do, what you care about, what lights your fire, and then helping create activities and opportunities that are going to help build a foundation underneath your experiences. So a little bit about the planning process. So the first thing that everybody needs to do when they come to the planning process this year is reframe this as an opportunity, not a deficit. You know, a lot of people who are thinking about gap years right now, maybe you had toyed with the idea before, but you had been planning to go to college until until they said it's not really going to be college at all. So when you're thinking about how to plan a gap year, you definitely want to come into it with a positive mindset, but also realistic. And then every good planning process starts with goal setting. I like to subcategorize gap year goals into 3 categories: personal, practical, and professional. So this means that you pick 2 or 3 goals in each of those categories to kind of help frame out your year. So that could be personal goals or hobbies or things that you're interested in that you might want to experience on your gap time. Practical goals are those life skills that are going to help you be more successful in adulthood. And then, you know, professional goals or any kinds of career exploration or internship opportunities that could help lead you towards your future major or college career. Researching opportunities is what you do once you have your goals, because then you can kind of focus in. It's not just the internet, you know, being out there and overwhelming for you, but you can kind of think about how you can meet each of those goals in different types of programs. Another part of researching opportunities is to talk to people. Talk to any friends who've taken a gap year, or if you have a cousin or other people in your world who've taken gap time, talk to them. Talk to teachers or guidance counselors or people like me who specialize in gap years to find out what they know and give you recommendations. Then you can create a list of choices, and that's you kind of try to whittle down what you're finding on the internet and through connections to what seems like the most exciting and feasible for you. And then you kind of set up your plan and design your itinerary based on those top choices of activity or type of program. And one thing that I'm inviting people to do this year is that if you do want to do something that's a little bit more further afield or seems like it's not possible for the fall, feel free to place that at the end of your itinerary. So if you want to backpack through Europe, or if you want to go to Madagascar, or if you want to do some of these things that are obviously not going to be possible by September, think about placing those towards the end of your gap time when we can at least hope that the world will be more open and will be just able to move around more freely. But most importantly is that once you have that plan, brainstorm what your contingencies could be. That will help you pivot and think creatively and just be more resilient in the face of uncertainty. So for instance, you may choose a gap year program to spend your fall with, but if they release a plan and they say that they can't actually run in the fall, then you're going to need to create more meaning for that period of time. So if you've already brainstormed what that could look like for you, then you can, you know, go right to it, and you won't lose any time or sweat on it. So a little bit about, you know, the types of gap year programs that are available. A lot of times if you Google gap year program, what will come up are what we would call experiential semesters or experiential programs. These are fixed length programs that offer a cohort experience, so they're very social, and they're also guided and mentored. They're awesome experiences, especially, I mean, for a lot of the students that I'm working with right now, a lot of them are gravitating towards this type of program because it's quite likely that they will be able to run in the fall if they're domestic. And also, people are starving for that socialization, and these opportunities are going to be highly social. So, you know, there's different scenarios that I want to walk you through when I talk about these different categories of program. Scenario 1 is where we would see virtual or community-based opportunities being an option. Scenario 2 is domestic or US-based options. And then scenario 3 is international. And so on each of these slides, you'll see kind of examples of how each of those program types could play out in those 3 settings. So with experiential semesters, we do have some that are already ready and available on the cloud. They're different by theme. So some are about being global citizens, some are about building adult skills and thinking about career exploration, and some have other focuses. So you can do that in tandem with a local opportunity and still have a peer cohort, but it's going to be a virtual experience. There's also domestic programs that are onboarding right now that still have space. A lot of them are wilderness-based, where you're working on outdoor skills. Some of them are place-based in rural communities, so they're, again, a little bit safer. And then there's also, you know, different types of programs that are in selected other areas, like Portland, Oregon, or Maine, or other places like that. And then, you know, in scenario 3, you know, we are seeing that some areas of the world are starting to open up to Americans, areas of the Caribbean, Iceland, other countries like that, and we know that other countries are starting to unroll plans for inviting American travelers back under certain protocols. With experiential semesters, you can expect to do quarantining and testing and even orientation in quarantine as part of the experience to help mitigate risk to yourself and others on the program. So that's one of the protocols that they are implementing to make them available to run. Another thing that I'm noticing with programs for this year is that many of them are ending around Thanksgiving for the same reason that colleges are ending around Thanksgiving. But other times, some are starting a little bit later if they're international to kind of hedge on the fact that they may be able to go to certain countries by October. And so we've seen some programs starting a little bit earlier, ending by Thanksgiving. Other programs are starting a little bit later and ending by the holidays in December. So volunteering is very similar as far as layout. You can volunteer virtually, you can volunteer in your community. I know that my community has COVID relief opportunities, and there's always going to be organizations who want your labor and your effort and your creativity in their spaces. So think about that if you're going to be closer to home. If you want to stay in the States but be away from home, you can look for opportunities on our public lands. You can look for other types of volunteering that are in places where you may be able to stay with friends or family. And then hopefully as the year moves on, the world will open up more and you may be able to volunteer internationally as in years past. And a lot of gap year students say that international volunteering is some of the best opportunities they've had to engage internationally. I also wanted to highlight national and civic service. You know, AmeriCorps is the umbrella organization that governs all of our civil service opportunities, and many of those opportunities are available to gap year students. So take a look at the AmeriCorps website and you can find anywhere from shorter term opportunities to year-long opportunities on that website. And similarly, there's lots of disaster relief opportunities as well, including FEMA Corps. And I definitely consider Corona a disaster. And so look into contact tracing and other types of Corona relief effort in your community or through contact tracing organizations to see if that might be something you're interested in. Lastly, it is an election year and young people are ready for it. So if you want to get involved on a local, state, or national election campaign, if you want to work for an issues-based organization, you should. And you can find something either in your own community or you can go further afield somewhere else to work on that. But there's lots of opportunities in that way too. So then we have interning. A lot of people have been asking me, is interning even possible right now and in this climate? And I would say that, like, you know, a lot of students want to do internship programs where you're actually matched with like there's a matchmaking process so you can have an internship in your industry of interest. And those are most of the scenario 2 and the scenario 3 type programs where you're actually living away from home, living with other interns, and that can be either here in the US or international. Most of those are not happening until January and onward. So if you're wanting to do a career-related experience, which doesn't always have to be an internship, it can also be a job shadow, it can also be a volunteer opportunity that you kind of parlay into a career experience. But you know, think about the people you know in your network. You know, parents, teachers, other trusted adults. They might be able to connect you in your own community to opportunities that are of interest. So definitely take advantage of that this year. And then there's courses. You know, there's always things that people want to learn on their year, whether it be in the arts or outdoor experiences or, you know, any practical skills and certifications. So you can go do these in your own community or across the world. So think about if there's something that you really want to learn, there's probably going to be some sort of facilitated way that you can learn it, including virtually. So I've had a student take a pastry making class during quarantine. I've been taking dance classes. Like there's no end to what you can learn in various situations this year. And then we've got other kind of, I couldn't fit these all into one category. So we've got, you know, a lot of sustainable agriculture opportunities are going to be available this year to students because they tend to be in more rural locations where you can easily socially distance. So there are actual gap year programs that focus on living close to the land and sustainable agriculture. And then there's also work exchange programs through platforms like Workaway and Woofing that will allow you to kind of work on farms all over the country as well as the world. So if you're interested in that kind of work, there's stuff out there for you. Innovation, you know, are you trying to solve a problem? Are you interested in startup culture? Do you want to start a business on your gap year? Like now is the time. So, you know, jump into that with both feet and see where it leads you. And then lastly, you know, you can still have adventures this year. I think that we've all struggled with what this year has been so far. And I want to, really highlight the fact that there are ways to have safe and thoughtful adventures this year too, whether they're outdoors or road trip, or maybe later this year, international traveling and adventures as well. So as you think about your own gap year experience, there's questions that you can ask yourself, and then there's going to be this process that you undertake in deciding whether or not it's the right pathway for you. One of the reasons I wanted to do this webinar and kind of update it for this moment in time is that I know a lot of people are under deferral deadlines and other constraints to kind of make this decision. So the things that I want you to know about coming away from this video are that it is possible to have a meaningful gap year, and that you have to be ready and flexible for it to change. It could be, the opportunities could be, more varied and dynamic and exciting than what I've mentioned, or, we could be looking at situations that are going to be, smaller in scale, closer to home, or other things like that. But that shouldn't change your decision matrix. You have to think about what's going to be best for you and what you want out of your gap year and college life. So know that you can have a meaningful and fun year, and know that there are people out here to support you in this endeavor. So a little bit about how I help students. I do have formal consulting where I help coach people through the planning process and execution of gap years. And then I also have an online course that if you want to plan your gap year independently and just need a little bit of those building blocks to make it happen for yourself, you can access my Teachable course as well. So that's out there for you and ready to go if you want it. As far as Onward resources and how to find me, I would definitely encourage you to visit the Gap Year Association. Again, they're a nonprofit accreditation organization, so they have accredited program listings on their website. They have guides about how to plan your gap year. They have data about gap years, all sorts of stuff. Their website is a treasure trove. Election2020gapyear.com is a website that I co-edited with some friends in the gap year space. And it's all about how to take a civically engaged gap year, or at least until through the election. So some students are deciding to work on election or activist issues through election time and then populate their year with other activities after November. Service Year Alliance is a user-friendly database to search for AmeriCorps and other national service opportunities. You can also take a listen to my podcast, Gap Year Radio. I interview gap year alums alongside my co-host Margot, and it's a great resource for just getting inspiration and hearing what people have done before you. And a lot of the episodes of domestic programs that we feature are running this year, or I should say are planning to run this year. So it's not so far-fetched to gain inspiration from past students this year. Lastly, find me on the internet or get in touch if I can be of help to you. Students, find me on Instagram at EnRoute Gap Year. You're welcome to email me, Julia at enroutegapyear.com. And I'm physically in Stowe, Vermont. Not that that matters in the age of the internet, but I'm gonna stop my share so I can give you a proper goodbye. But thanks so much for listening in, and I hope that this webinar was helpful. Feel free to be in touch if I can be of help in the future. And in the meantime, good luck with making your decision. I hope you make one that suits you and is gonna make the most sense for your stepping stones into adulthood. Have a good one.